Shalom, shalom, all praises due to Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In today's video, I'm going to go over a piece of artifact that further proves that the Israelites were in captivity and in bondage in the land of Egypt. Because, contrary to popular belief, you got a lot of idiots out there, especially amongst the Kemetic community, the so-called Egyptologists or Kemetic community, the House of Consciousness. All throughout the years, they've been trying to perpetuate this lie and this falsehood that the Israelites were never in bondage in Egypt, and there's no historical proof that could prove the validity of the scripture. So I'm going to go ahead and read this article right now on a piece of artifact that they found, and it's called the El Harish stone. And it says, decoding the El Harish stone, almost forgotten, in a tiny museum of Ismailia, some 125 kilometers northeast of Cairo, is an artifact that what corroborates the biblical Exodus and provides us with very inside story from an Egyptian point of view. So now we have a piece of artifact called the El Harish stone. It's also known as the monolith of El Harish, and it corroborates with the Exodus. It provides you with information and more proof that the Israelites were in bondage in Egypt, and it was in fact an Exodus that took place. So now it says, even the museum curator does not realize the artifact's significance. It's known as the El Harish stone. It is a piece of black granite weighted 2 tons, measuring 4 feet in length and 2.5 feet in width. It was found in 1887 on a farm in Al Harish, lying on the side. At the time, it was being used as a water through the cattle when archaeologist Francis Louis Griffin found the slab of granite. His clue to its value was the hieroglyphs. Okay, by the writings, he dated the object to be problematic period, significantly the 30th dynasty, 380 to 360 BCE, when it was probably used as a shrine. But the inscription seems to refer to the event 1200 years earlier, 1500 BCE, and it appears to tell the story of the Exodus with a twist. The story is told from Pharaoh's, not Moses' perspective. It says, in the past, I've always summarized the findings. Now, what I want to do is treat the hieroglyphs on this stone as a series of posts. I want to decode the 2,300-year-old inscriptions and see what secrets they may reveal. The first 5 lines of hieroglyphic states my translations based on Griffin and Goyen. And it says, the majestic shoe was the perfect king of heaven, of the earth, the underworld, of water, of winds, of the primeval water, of the hills, and of the sea. He took command, giving orders from the throne of the Father, Hahamkes, the brave one. Now the majestic shoe went to his royal residence in Memphis. There is His Majesty spoke to the great council of 9 gods, which accompany him. Come now, let us march from the east towards my royal residence at Nebes. There you'll see your fathers, Raham Keys, in the luminous regions of Aki. We can go ahead, taking the river, and let us organize ourselves at the court at Nebes. Then they did according to all that His first Majesty decreed. You wouldn't think that this has anything to do with the biblical Exodus, but it does. Later in the text, the stone describes a parting of what? Of the sea. You can also read about that in the scripture when we read about the story of the Exodus. The biblical plague of darkness is also mentioned in the scripture. It's also mentioned on the El Harish stone. As a result, most people who know about this stone jump to the exciting part. But if we pick up the story from the very beginning, we may get a whole different take on the biblical Exodus. And it says the biblical tale of Exodus recounts the liberation of the Israelite slaves led by Moses from under Pharaoh's rules. But if you want to understand the lead up to this event, you have to recall that according to the Bible, originally the 12 tribes of Israel were living in Egypt in freedom, not slavery. So, as to avoid famine in the land of Israel, they had arrived in Egypt as a small clan under the leadership of the patriarch Jacob. In other words, the beginning of the Israelites flourished according to the Bible. One Israelite son, Jacob, Joseph, rose to the rank near Pharaoh. So how did the uprightly mobile Israelites become slaves? Well, the book of Exodus states that after Joseph's death, the Egyptian authorities turned against Joseph's people. That the key to understand this story, and now we have the means to unlock its secrets. There are $2 million questions. Let me go ahead. Why did the Egyptians make slaves of the Israelites? The book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 8 to verse 11. Put it this way, my translation is from the Hebrew. A new king rose up over Egypt, did not know Joseph, and he said, this to his free, see there, the Israelites, free serf, are becoming more numerous and stronger than we are. Let us deal treacherously with them, lest they multiply further. Then, when war breaks out, they too will join our enemies and do battle against us. So, what is the Torah saying there? Joseph died, and a new king and a new Pharaoh took over Egypt. Joseph could have been the king. He was second in command to Pharaoh. You can read about it in Genesis 41, verse 42. The Israelites live in Goshen, Lower Egypt. In the book of Genesis, Joseph's boss called Pharaoh king of Egypt. Genesis 41, verse 46. At that time, Lower Egypt was represented by the red crown of Upper Egypt by the white crown. Only the most popular pharaohs wore both crowns. Only the most powerful were called pharaohs and kings after Joseph's death. A new king arose. Usually this passage is understood by referring to a new pharaoh. Read differently, read accurately. The passage or the biblical passage is referring to the man who replaced Joseph, not Pharaoh. To be clear, after Joseph's death, a new Joseph arose, not a new Pharaoh. And it says that the Bible states that unlike Joseph, this new ruler did not know Joseph. Clearly, this doesn't mean that Joseph was infinitely forgotten. What it means is that this new ruler did not follow Joseph's policies. The new ruler set himself up as king. Basically, whereas Joseph was loyal to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the new ruler wasn't. He grabbed the red crown for himself. When he did this, he realized that a war would ensue. He knew that the pharaohs based in Thebes in Upper Egypt will come looking for a crown and attempt to reclaim the kingdom. In a dispensation of coming war, the usurper decided to enslave the Israelites. He was worried, but just as Joseph had been loyal to the pharaohs, so too would be his Israelite brothers. Finally, now we can understand the plain meaning of the biblical text. This new king said that his free serfs let us deal treacherously with the Israelites, lest they multiply further. When war breaks out, they too will join our enemies to battle against us. It states that Pharaoh followed the king of Egypt in his anti-Israelite policies. He ordered all the male Israelite babies to be killed, basically in anticipation of a coming war. Neither side trusted the Israelites, thinking they will join the opposition. The Israelites were literally caught in the crossfire. There's only one period in the Egyptian history which fits this biblical scenario. Scholars say the Hyksos period, basically a Semitic Canaanitish people from the area of Canaan, Israel, migrated into the lower region of Egypt, then grabbed the red crown. Apparently, they introduced the chariot of the Egyptian warfare, so they leveraged their technology against the local ruler. For a while, the Egyptians in the south were too weak to fight these invaders, but then under Pharaoh Sennacherib II, known as the Brave, the pharaohs started liberation of war against the Hyksos. Sennacherib, the Brave, died in a battle. After this defeat, the son Kamoses took over the throne. He regrouped his army, met his generals in place in the south, and then once again attacked the Hyksos, lower Egypt. The above scenario is exactly what is described both in the Torah and also where in the El Harish stone. So you can find everything that he mentioned in the above and all these different verses throughout the Torah and the scripture. You can find that also in the El Harish stone, which the El Harish stone is a perfect piece of evidence to further prove the Exodus and to also further prove that the Israelites were in captivity, were in bondage in the land of Egypt. The biblical story is now unfolding from different points of view. In the above quoted passage, the synchronicity between the biblical text and the Egyptian archaeology has been what overlooked. The Torah says that in anticipation of war, the Israelites were enslaved by the Hyksos king because he was concerned that the Israelites would join the Egyptians. On the other side of the coin, the El Arish stone relates that Pharaoh, known by his god named Shu, son of the brave one, had suddenly taken over the father's throne. He then regrouped his army, marched it away from the battlefield, met his lion god counselor, a place called Agnebs, and plotted revenge. Basically, when you line up the Torah at the beginning of the book of Exodus with the first 5 lines of the El Haristo, you get a glimpse of the backroom politics of the Exodus. You literally see the winds of war gaining momentum. With this decoding the first time, we get the Egyptian perspective on the biblical events. From their point of view, they started a war of liberation against the Hyksos. They lost the divine leader and the battle, but the dead Pharaoh's son saved the day. From our point of view, Pharaoh Commons prepared for a counterattack and participated in the event that will lead to Moses and the Exodus. And they say to be continued, we will continue to be called the Halloween storm in my upcoming blog. So as you can see, I'm gonna see if I can probably click on it. I guess I can. All right, it's not. Let's see. All right, as you can see, there we have a piece of evidence. It's called the El Harish stone. It's also known as the monolith of El Harish, and it further validates what the Exodus. It also further validates the existence of the Israelites, and it also further validates the validity of the scriptures. Because we've been saying for a long time, us as Israelites, and who are the Israelites? And I'm talking about the Israelites scattered throughout North, South, Central America. If your forefathers have the marker, the Y-DNA marker, or the E marker, e1b1a, on the paternal side of the family, and your ancestors came over here on cargo slave ships, then this is for you. You are an Israelite because there's just so much oppositions out there, especially amongst the quote-unquote black unconscious movements, and as well as other white folks out there who are trying to deceive and lie to the masses of the people to trying to say that the Bible is not accurate, which is totally false. Okay, so I'm gonna end this video right now. I'm probably gonna come back for part 2 to show you more archaeology, more artifacts that could further proof of Israelites being in captivity in ancient Egypt. So I'm gonna sign out right now, and I say shalom.